All right, welcome. Here are my Eastern Conference preseason predictions. I know they look pretty similar to how this how it finished. This past season finished. Let me do some explaining and tell you why I put teams where they did. I was really hoping this was going to look different. I think it's going to look drastically different going into next year, the way a lot of these teams are trending. But let's discuss. Starting off with the Atlantic, I have Florida finishing that division as number one. I think it's a clear cut. Florida, Toronto will be the 1 and 2 teams. Florida, they lose a few players, but essentially they have pretty much the same team they started with at the beginning of last season, where they performed pretty well. You have upcoming goalie Spencer Knight. Maybe he'll break through. Hopefully you get a good season from Bobrovsky. Hopefully, considering he's getting paid quite a bit. Paul Maurice should be a good step in as coach. I don't see this team taking too much of a step back. You lose Huberdeau, you lose Uyghur. There's a bit of a hole in the blue line. You get Kachuk. So there are some question marks. It might take a few games for some of these guys to get some chemistry. But overall, I think they're still my favorite to win the Atlantic Division. Second place, I have Toronto. And the only reason I have Toronto in second and not first is because of their goaltending. They got pretty good goaltending from Jack Campbell last year, and they took a significant downgrade in goaltending, going with Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov as their tandem. There is a chance that one of them shines and becomes the number one starter and has a good season. And if that happens, I wouldn't be surprised to see Toronto bump up to number one. But there are way too many question marks around that goaltending tandem, and it may cost them a few games, which might cost them the first place in the Atlantic. So these are just preseason thoughts. Obviously, the standings probably aren't going to finish like this. Tampa, I think Tampa took a step back with some of the players they lost. There's most notably Ryan McDonough off to Nashville. It's a huge loss on that blue line. They gave a lot of extensions out, didn't really do a lot of signing. A lot of the younger guys are going to have to step up and play a fairly significant role. I don't think this is nearly as good of a team as it was a few years ago when they started winning the Stanley Cups. They're still very good. Still a lot of potential. I still anticipate them making the playoffs and making a run in the playoffs because that's what they seem to be very good at. So that should be interesting. It'd be really cool to see Toronto-Tampa in the first round again, too. Fourth place, I have Boston. There's a lot of question marks coming into the season because of injuries to guys like McAvoy, Grzelcyk, Marchand, all projected to be out until at least December, assuming their rehab goes well. There's a lot of question marks. First pairing defensive pairing for the Bruins is going to be most likely Hampus Lindholm and Brandon Carlo. So we'll see what that brings. There's some young guys that could step in. Most notably Zboril on that defensive pairing third line. He looked pretty good with Mike Riley last season. I wouldn't be surprised to see that being the third pairing and being a good third pairing. And then when they get all their guys back and healthy, I think Boston's just going to start rolling. The addition of David Krejci is huge. They really needed a second-line center for the entire season last year. They didn't have it. Eric Holla stepped in for the second half of the season and did really well, and they went on a nice winning streak. But in terms of production from that position, you're going to get a lot more from David Krejci, even if he isn't the same David Krejci from a couple years ago, than you would from a Holla or Charlie Coyle pairing in that second-line center position. I think that's going to bolster their offense a bit, which they need. The defense is good. The goaltending is good. Of course, there's room for improvement in both of those areas, but overall, it's the scoring with Boston. And, this might be their last playoff run, but I have them making the wild card. However, Ottawa is right behind them. My question with Ottawa, and they've really bolstered their offense. Their offense is great. I have a lot of trust and faith with Cam Talbot in net. He's a very good goalie. He's very underrated. He did an excellent job in Minnesota, and they have a great guy in Anton Forsberg as well. So that could be a 1A, 1B scenario with goaltenders posting 914 save percentages and above. My question with Ottawa, and it's a huge, huge question mark, is their defense. How will their defense hold up? It's a lot of young guys, a lot of highly touted prospects. Will they develop? Will they grow from last year? Will they play better in their own zone? That's my big question mark. I don't see them making that substantial of a jump. I think they get better, but I don't think they get so good to a point where it's, bumping them into a playoff spot over Boston. Next year, I could see that happening, no doubt. This year, it's a little hazy. Boston's probably going to lose Bergeron and Krejci most likely next year. They may not. That'd be great, but they might as well. So that, even more reason why Boston will fall and some of these other teams will jump up. Detroit and Buffalo also up and coming. Detroit made a lot of improvements. I don't think they made the quality improvements they needed to be a contender. They're still finishing up that rebuilding stage. They're still getting their prospects in. I don't think they're quite there yet. They're obviously going with Ville Husso, who had a great regular season and was all over the place in the playoffs. They have Nedeljkovic in net, which is a good tandem. Both goaltenders still have a lot to prove. They go ahead and get a guy like David Perron. That's great. I love David Perron. He only really scores, most of his goals are power play goals. And then, are you taking power play goals again from someone like Lucas Raymond? But they have a great young core. They have a good young team. You got Larkin, you got Raymond, you got Seider. Seider was a beast last year. These guys are only going to get better, including Dylan Larkin. I think he's going to have a better season than he did last year. I don't think that was just a career year. So Detroit's getting a lot better. And Buffalo's growing too. It's at the point where when I see it, I'll believe it when Buffalo makes the playoffs. I've gambled on Buffalo before making the playoffs, and they just end up in last place. I think they got better entirely. I think they got a lot better. A lot of their guys are getting experience. They got Owen Power. He should be in the lineup. He should be a regular. He looks great. You got Dahlin, who's still developing and looks much better every season he plays. You got a lot of key pieces in Buffalo. It's just a matter of when this team will develop to a stage where it's a bunch of superstars and they're a playoff contender perennially. Last place I have Montreal. I honestly don't think Montreal will be as bad as last year. I think they'll do a little better. But at the same time, I don't think they got I don't think they made improvements that were as substantial as the teams above them. I think the Atlantic Division and the Metro Division will be a lot tighter. I think a lot of the top four teams, really the top three, got worse. Boston kind of stayed the same, which was mediocre. And the bottom four teams got a lot better. So I think we'll see a lot more parity. I think there's an opportunity if, say, Austin Matthews gets injured. He's out for a month. Right? Maybe he breaks his arm or something. We could see Toronto fall out of the playoff race because I think it's going to be a lot tighter this year than it has been, especially last year. Last year, everyone knew who was making the playoffs before the season started. This year, I think there's going to be a little more parity, which is fun to watch. It's fun hockey. It's more of a dogfight. Games are more meaningful. You're not just watching Florida play back-to-backs with Buffalo and Montreal and Detroit. And then going to Philadelphia and finishing up their season. Those are meaningless games. So I think there'll be a lot more parity this year. At least I'm hoping so. Metro Division. I got the New York Rangers finishing up that division as the number one seed. I think they got a little better. They didn't really lose anyone that's going to hurt them too much. I really, really, really like the addition of Vinny Trocheck. I'm a big fan of Trocheck. I'm a Bruins fan, and I don't like to see the Carolina Hurricanes win or do well. The Hurricanes seem to always knock the Bruins out of the playoffs whenever they match up. But man, Vinny Trocheck, he's just getting started. I don't even know how old is he. He's 29, and he just continues to get better every year. Great two-way forward, guy that can put up 50 points on a second line. He's physical. He's got some leadership qualities. I think that's a huge pickup for New York. I think it's an upgrade from Andrew Kopp. And I think they got him at a pretty good bargain for, the term might be a little long, but, there's a lot of young players on this team too. You got Philip Hedl, Lafreniere, Capo Caco, Ryan Lindgren, Adam Fox, K'Andre Miller. They're all young guys. They're just going to get better. So New York's my pick for number one. Carolina, It's my pick for number 2. And just like the Atlantic, these could go back and forth. It really depends on Carolina's second line center position. That is such a crucial role nowadays in in the NHL. You can't just have one line that rolls and scores. You have to have two lines that can put up points. And at the moment, it looks like Kotkaniemi is going to be the second line center in Carolina. And I don't know. I mean, I like him. I think there's a lot of potential with him. It's good to be patient. I don't know if he's ready to step into that number 2 center role yet. It would be great to see him flourish and just thrive in that spot. I think he's capable of it. I just don't know if he's capable right now of doing that. A lot of question marks with that. Pacioretty's going to be out for quite some time to start the season off because that's just classic Max Pacioretty. Brett Burns is a huge addition. I like that addition over D'Angelo. He's not going to put up the number of points D'Angelo puts up, but he's way better. He's way more responsible on defense and can provide some offense. Dude's a great skater. Him and Jacob Slavin, if they're paired together, that's probably one of the best defensive pairings in the entire league. You can make defensive pairings anyway because you got Devon Toews and Makar, and that's a fantastic pairing as well. You can make arguments, but it's going to be one of the better defensive pairings in the league if that happens. Third place, I have Washington. Now, they're going to be without Nicholas Backstrom, but they're going to have Kuznetsov. I believe it's Kuznetsov. Yeah, Kuznetsov. I always confuse Kuznetsov in Washington and Kucherov in Tampa. They're going to have Kuznetsov, who is an incredible player. He's like the Kucherov of Washington. Always hurt, should be healthy and ready to go this season. I think that will take the place of some of the offense lost with Backstrom. I don't think there's going to be a huge drop-off in that offensive production from Washington. And their goaltending was rough last year. You had Vitek Vanacek and Samsonov, who are both great guys, great goalies, but it was a struggle to get to 900 save percentage for the both of them last year. They upgraded to Darcy Kemper, who, if he can put up a 926 save percentage in the Arizona Coyotes system while they're still in last place and have no defense, I think they'll be all right as long as Darcy Kemper stays healthy. I think they go up, and I have Pittsburgh moving down to the wild card spot in 4th. The 2 stars are the wild card positions. These straight dashes, there's Ottawa, Columbus, New Jersey Islanders. That means I think they're going to be in the wild card race at least until close to the end of the season, if not right up until the final game. And these squiggly marks, I think they'll be in the race up until a few weeks out, and I think we'll start to see these teams separate. But Pittsburgh, it's just Pittsburgh. They're just doing their thing. Not much has changed. They re-signed Raquel. They're a good team. I'm not too worried about the Penguins. They're just getting a little older, and they just need to make it to the playoffs. And when they're in the playoffs, they can make a lot of noise. But they just need to get to the playoffs. I think they're capable of that. They're definitely a playoff team on paper. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But I just have Washington and Pittsburgh swapping spots from last year. Columbus did pretty well last year. They were about a 500 team. They add Johnny Gaudreau, which is nice. Obviously, they lose Bjorkstrand, a 30-goal scorer. I think Gaudreau can replace the goals, but I think Gaudreau can also... He's great at dishing the puck and getting those assists. I think he can create a lot more goals than Bjorkstrand was creating. So I think the offense improves. I don't think it improves a significant amount, but, Gaudreau and Laine playing together, you could see Laine hit 50 goals. You could see Gaudreau hit, 35 to 40 goals. 40 goals might be a little ambitious, but, he did it last year. I think that offense is going to help them win a few more games than they have this previous season. I think they'll definitely be above 500. I don't know how many more games they'll win because of the addition of Gaudreau and the offense being bolstered. But we'll see. It's kind of starting to be an exciting time to be a Columbus fan. Still got a ways to go. You got guys like Cole Sillinger will be another year removed from the draft and another year of experience under his belt. New Jersey, I think, got a lot better. I think not re-signing PK Subban helps their defense. when it comes to playing defense, Subban can be questionable, and he was very questionable in New Jersey. So hopefully that helps the defense because their defense struggled significantly last year. Dougie Hamilton was also injured last year. I think we see a nice bounce back season from him. I don't think he's gonna, be a Norris candidate at the end of the season, but any decent season from Dougie Hamilton you'll take, and he'll be fine. It'll be nice to have him back. They got rid of Zaka. They bring in Halla. I like the addition of Halla. I think Halla will mesh well with that young core. Jack Hughes, superstar. He's going to have a huge season. This team is trending upwards in a nice fashion. Does Vitek Vanacek in net help? Does Mackenzie Blackwood have a better season? Again, I think a lot of it had to do with their defense last year. I think it gets slightly better this year. How much of an impact will that have? We'll see. They were below average in scoring goals. They were above average in terms of letting goals in, which means they let more goals in than the average and didn't score enough goals. So both areas need to improve, and I think slight improvements were made, and I think they'll be better than last year. They'll be a lot more competitive than last year. They put on some, just as Buffalo did and Detroit did at the beginning of the season, Buffalo at the end, just as the Islanders did. They proved they can go on streaks and win games. It's just a matter of sustaining those streaks and sustaining the winning culture. We might be a year removed from New Jersey, but man, if New Jersey keeps that core together, they're gonna be good for the next few years to come. Islanders, they didn't really do anything. They got Romanov, which is great. I like Romanov, but at the same time, how much is he going to provide to a team that's already defensively focused? They're really they need to score goals, and they don't have a lot of guys that can do that. I think the Islanders aren't going to be as rough, get off to a rough start like they did last year. I think they'll be competitive, but I think they'll be around 500. You got Sorokin, who's a beast. You got your whole defense, Pelech, Pollock, Sorokin, Varlamov. Your defensive structure in the Islanders organization is fantastic. Even your forwards are excellent two-way forwards. A lot of them play very good defense. Don't discount that. It's a huge factor of defense. It's just the goals. Are they going to score enough goals? Are they going to have to win a lot of games 2-1, 1-0? And is that sustainable? It's a very old school mentality. How much of an impact will a new coach have? Will he care more about defensive men driving up in the zone and providing offense? Or go back to a more Barry Trotz reserve system where the defensive defensemen stay back in the zone, take shots from the blue line, and retreat back? What will he see? I don't see too much of an improvement on the New York Islanders' part. I don't think they're going to be awful. I don't think they're going to be good. Probably about a 500 team. Philadelphia, dude, who knows? Tortorella does magic with teams. He'll come in and he'll change the culture, and that's really Philadelphia really needs a culture change. But they had guys like D'Angelo, and Sean Couturier should be their number one center moving forward. But they didn't really improve anything. They're pretty satisfied with sustaining the pace they're on. I don't really know what's going on in Philadelphia land. They're not going to be good. I don't think they're going to be awful. I don't think they're going to be Arizona or Chicago awful, because John Tortorella will establish a better culture and establish winning ways. He expects to win. I just don't think the team is built to win. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic. Philadelphia is going to be in last. Philadelphia and Montreal are not even going to be in the playoff hunts, I don't think, at any point. Again, Buffalo, Detroit will probably tail off with a month or so left in the season. So the top eight that made the playoffs in the Eastern Conference last year, I have them repeating. I just do. I think. So we talked about this. I think the New York Rangers got a little better. The Hurricanes, I think, stayed about the same, honestly. Just their second line center, man. I think Capitals got a little better. The Pittsburgh stayed about the same. Keep in mind, Carolina, Washington, Pittsburgh, they're aging. They're getting older. What impact will that have? Columbus got a little better. New Jersey, I think, got quite a bit better. The Islanders stayed about the same, but they're not a bad team. Philadelphia and Montreal they're going to be last place. So I think we could see a lot happening in the Atlantic in the near future. Um, in the Metro Division, I could see New Jersey coming in to the playoff race in the next year or so. Columbus, depending on what they do at the trade deadline and the next offseason, could make a case unless they do nothing. Then they might just be a fringe wild card team, as they have been for what seems like forever. The Islanders didn't get better. Philly didn't get better. Your New York Rangers, they're kind of scary because it's a very young core. I'm a little concerned about Halak backing up. Shesterkin. I keep mixing Sorokin and Samsonov, but it's Shesterkin. Wrong teams, man. Will Halak be a decent backup for Shesterkin? But it's a really young defensive core, and it's where they need to improve his defense. And I think a lot of these guys had finished the season really strong last year and will get better going into this year. I think their defense won't be as much of an issue going into this year. Their offense is great. We'll see how the lines pan out. If Panarin's on the first line, second line, Kreider is on the first line. I think Kreider will be on the second line, but he gets all his goals on the power play anyway. But Carolina, Washington, Pittsburgh, they're aging. They're just aging. Carolina, not as bad because you have guys like Aho and Svechnikov. You have guys that can be there for the long term, and it's a good core to have. You still have older guys on that team. Washington and Pittsburgh are very concerning because of how much their team is aging. Pittsburgh signed their old guys up for another bunch of years until they're all 40. We'll see how that plays out in a few years. I think that's going to hurt Pittsburgh in the long run, but helps them now be competitive in the Metro. So that's kind of my analysis. Those are my predictions for the Eastern Conference of the 2022-2023 NHL season. Obviously, I'm probably going to be wrong because that's just what happens with predictions. We'll do the Western Conference next. What do you guys have? Do you have different teams? Do you have Ottawa making the playoffs? Do you have Boston making the playoffs at all? You think Pittsburgh's going to make the playoffs? Does any team take a step back or significantly jump in the standings? Let me know what you guys think. I think that's all I got. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time. Take care.